Entire food industries would collapse without traveling bee convoys. Not tractors, not drones, not satellites, bees. Every year, millions of beehives are loaded onto flatbed trucks and driven across highways in the dark. They pass through deserts, mountain roads, small towns, and giant farming regions, carrying billions of living workers in wooden boxes. And without them, some of the most familiar foods in the grocery store would become harder to grow, more expensive, or much less common. Almonds, apples, blueberries, cherries, melons, pumpkins, cucumbers, many of them depend on pollination. And in modern agriculture, pollination is not just something that happens naturally in a sunny field. It has become a moving, buzzing, nationwide logistics system. Today, we are going inside the strange world of commercial bee trucking. Why farms need bees on wheels. How beekeepers move entire colonies without destroying them. Why this system became so important. And why one of the most delicate creatures in nature now travels like freight. Because the weirdest part is not that bees are shipped by truck. The weirdest part is that modern farming may not work without it. For most of human history, pollination looked simple. Flowers opened, bees visited them, pollen moved from one blossom to another. Fruit began to grow. It felt like nature doing its job quietly in the background. But modern farms changed the scale. A small backyard orchard can rely on nearby insects. A wild meadow can attract pollinators from all directions. But a huge commercial farm is different. It may stretch for thousands of acres with one crop blooming all at once. For most of the year, that field may offer bees almost nothing. Then, for a short window, it becomes an enormous buffet of flowers. That sounds beautiful, until you realize the problem. There often are not enough local bees to pollinate everything in time. A crop does not wait politely for nature to catch up. Flowers may only be receptive for a limited period. Weather can shorten the window. Rain, cold, or wind can keep bees inside their hives. And if pollination is poor, the farm may get fewer fruits, smaller fruits, uneven shapes, or lower yields. So farmers need pollinators exactly when the crop blooms, not 2 weeks early, not 2 weeks late. Right on schedule. And that is where the trucks come in. Commercial beekeepers raise and manage hives like mobile livestock. Their bees are not kept in one place all year. Instead, the hives follow the bloom. When one crop needs pollination, the bees are delivered. When that bloom ends, the hives are packed up and moved to the next one. A colony might help pollinate almonds in California, then move to orchards, berry farms, seed crops, or clover fields somewhere else. Some hives travel hundreds or even thousands of miles in a single season. Most people picture bees living a peaceful life near one farm. But for many commercial colonies, life is more like a road trip with wings. The biggest example is the almond industry. California grows a huge share of the world's almonds, and almond trees need a massive amount of pollination in a very short time. When the orchards bloom, millions of acres can erupt into pale flowers almost at once. The trees look calm. The logistics behind them are not. Trucks arrive loaded with stacks of wooden boxes, each one holding a living colony. Farmers rent those hives for the bloom, placing them throughout the orchard so bees can spread out and visit the blossoms. And for a few intense weeks, the almond orchards become one of the largest pollination events on Earth. But here is the strange part. After the bloom, those orchards are not a perfect home for bees. Once the flowers are gone, the food source disappears. A massive almond orchard is not a diverse wild landscape with flowers blooming all season. It is a specialized farming system built to produce one crop efficiently, so the bees move again. This is one of the hidden truths of industrial agriculture. Farm may look like nature, but it is often too concentrated and too synchronized to depend on local nature alone. The crop blooms at scale, so pollination must arrive at scale. Moving bees is not as simple as putting boxes on a truck and driving away. A hive is a living city. It has a queen, thousands of workers, developing young, stored honey, wax comb, airflow needs, temperature needs, and a very strong opinion about being disturbed. Beekeepers usually move hives at night or very early in the morning when most bees are inside. The boxes are stacked on pallets, lifted with forklifts, strapped down, and often covered with netting. The goal is to keep the bees contained, ventilated, and calm enough to survive the journey. That is harder than it sounds. A hive produces heat. Thousands of bees packed together can overheat if air cannot move through the load. Trucks may need to stop carefully, avoid long delays, and protect the bees from extreme temperatures. A traffic jam can become more than an inconvenience. It can become a biological emergency. Then there is the noise, vibration, and stress of travel. Bees can handle movement, but long-distance hauling is still demanding. When the truck finally reaches the farm, the hives must be unloaded and placed in the right pattern across the fields. Too few hives, and the crop may be underpollinated, too many in one spot, and the bees may compete for the same flowers while other areas get less coverage. Most people never think about this part. Pollination is not just bring bees. It is placement, timing, density, weather, bloom stage, colony strength, and constant coordination between farmers and beekeepers. The farmer cares about crop yield, the beekeeper cares about colony health. And the bees, of course, are just trying to survive and gather food in a landscape humans have arranged for maximum production. This system exists because modern food production is built around efficiency. Large farms specialize, processing plants specialize, trucks specialize, warehouses specialize, grocery stores expect consistent supply. Consumers expect fruit and nuts to appear reliably season after season. But specialization creates a hidden dependency. When farms become huge and uniform, they often need outside help to do what a more diverse ecosystem might have supported naturally. That outside help comes in the form of bees on trucks, and this is where the whole system starts to feel almost upside down. We took one of nature's most local processes, a bee moving from flower to flower, and turned it into a long-distance service industry. The bees are part of a supply chain, not after the food is harvested, before the food even exists, before an almond becomes a snack, before a blueberry reaches a cereal bowl, before a watermelon is sliced at a picnic. There may have been a beekeeper, a truck driver, a loading crew, a farm manager, and millions of insects arriving at the perfect moment. And if that timing fails, the effects can ripple through the food system. A bad pollination season can mean lower yields. Lower yields can mean tighter supply. Tighter supply can mean higher prices. And higher prices eventually show up far away from the orchard, in grocery aisles where nobody is thinking about bees. That would already be complicated enough, but it gets worse. Bees themselves are under pressure. Commercial colonies face pests, especially mites. They face diseases. They can be affected by pesticides, poor nutrition, habitat loss, extreme weather, and the stress of being moved from place to place. For bees, nutrition matters enormously. A diverse landscape gives them pollen from many plants, which can help support a healthier diet. But a huge single-crop bloom is more like a feast with one main ingredient. It may provide a lot of food for a short time, but not always the variety bees would find in a wilder environment. After that bloom ends, the beekeeper may need to move the hive somewhere better, feed them, or help them recover. So the business is not just about renting bees. It is about keeping colonies alive long enough to keep working, and that is not guaranteed. Beekeepers inspect hives for strength. They check whether the queen is healthy. They look for brood, honey stores, disease signs, and overall colony condition. Weak colonies may not pollinate well. Strong colonies are valuable because they send out more foragers and cover more flowers. In a way, a hive becomes both a living organism and an agricultural asset. That sounds cold, but it is the reality of producing food at modern scale. A farmer renting hives needs performance. A beekeeper needs payment to cover labor, transport, equipment, losses, and the endless work of keeping bees alive. The crop depends on the bees depend on the beekeeper depends on the farms. It is a fragile triangle, and trucks connect the whole thing. This next step is where things get interesting. A bee convoy does not look dramatic from the outside. To most drivers, it might just look like another flatbed load rolling down the interstate. But under the netting are thousands of small boxes filled with movement. At night, when temperatures are cooler and the bees are inside, the truck becomes a temporary traveling apiary. The driver has to keep moving carefully. Stops can be risky. Heat can build. Bees can escape if equipment shifts or netting fails. In some cases, accidents involving bee trucks have released millions of bees, turning a highway crash into something that sounds almost unreal. But most of the time, the system works quietly. That is the strange beauty of it. The modern food system depends on countless invisible routines that only become news when something goes wrong. Refrigerated trucks, grain elevators, packaging lines, port cranes, cold storage warehouses, water pumps, feed mills, and bee trucking belongs on that list. It is not a quirky side story. It is infrastructure, not concrete infrastructure, not steel infrastructure, living infrastructure. A farm can have perfect soil, expensive equipment, good irrigation, skilled workers, and healthy trees. But if the flowers are not pollinated, the harvest may never fully arrive. So the bees are brought in like a seasonal workforce. They do not sign contracts. They do not know they are working for an almond company, a fruit grower, or a seed producer. They are simply following flowers. But human systems have arranged those flowers into an industrial schedule. First this crop, then that crop, then another. Bloom by bloom, the bees move through the agricultural calendar, and this reveals something important about the food we eat. Convenience often hides movement. When you pick up a bag of almonds, a carton of berries, or a jar of honey, the product feels still. It sits on a shelf. It has a label. It looks simple. But behind it is motion. Seeds moved. Water moved. Fertilizer moved. Workers moved. Machines moved. Packages moved. Trucks moved. And in many cases, bees moved too. The food system is not just fields and stores. It is timing. Everything has to meet at the right place at the right moment. The crop must bloom. The bees must arrive. The weather must cooperate. The harvest crew must be ready. The processing plant must have capacity. The trucks must be scheduled. The store must be stocked. A missed window can matter. That is why pollination has become a business with contracts, schedules, pricing, inspections, and risk. Farmers may pay based on the number of hives they need. Beekeepers may prepare months in advance to make sure colonies are strong enough for the job. Trucks may travel through the night to hit a narrow arrival window. All for something most consumers never see, a bee landing on a flower. And yet, that tiny moment helps decide whether a crop succeeds. Modern farms depend on shipped bees because modern farms are built at a scale nature did not design around one field at a time. That does not mean the system is wrong. It means it is complex. It also means it has limits. Some farmers and researchers are looking for ways to reduce pressure on pollinators. More habitat near farms, more wildflower strips, better pesticide timing, more diverse landscapes, improved hive health practices, stronger monitoring. In some places, farmers try to support native bees as well as honeybees. But honeybees remain incredibly useful because their colonies are large, manageable, movable, and available on demand. A beekeeper can deliver pollination like a service. A wild ecosystem cannot always be scheduled. That is the central trade-off. Modern agriculture wants predictability. Nature works through diversity, seasonality, and balance. Bee trucking is the bridge between those two worlds. It lets farms produce huge amounts of food, but it also shows how dependent that production is on fragile living systems. And once you see it, grocery store food looks a little different. An almond is not just an almond. It is the result of a tree. Water, soil, sunlight, farm machinery, human labor, packing facilities, transportation, and a brief visit from a bee that may have arrived on a truck after crossing state lines. A blueberry is not just a blueberry. It is part of a chain that begins long before the package reaches the shelf. And the bee is not just a symbol of nature. In modern farming, it is a mobile worker inside one of the largest hidden logistics systems in agriculture. So the next time you see a truck on the highway stacked with wooden boxes and covered in netting, it might not be carrying furniture or construction supplies. It might be carrying the future of an orchard. Billions of tiny passengers moving through the night, helping entire food industries bloom on schedule. And that is the hidden truth. Modern farms do not only depend on land, water, machines, and labor. They also depend on a living supply chain with wings. If you enjoyed this look inside the hidden systems that keep everyday life moving, subscribe to Curious Eagle for more stories like this.